Good afternoon. It's truly an honor to have the opportunity to introduce Governor Kathy Hochul. And before I say anything else, I want to say I love that my governor is a woman. My name is Aneta Sicharan, and I'm the Executive Director of Chaya Community Development Corporation, based in Queens, serving low-income South Asians, Indo-Caribbeans, and Latinx community members. I'm thrilled to be here today to introduce Governor Hochul, who, from her very first day in office, has been putting the needs of our people at the forefront of her administration's work. Governor Hochul had only been in office a few days when Hurricane Ida hit. Lives were lost, homes were destroyed, and what's worse, many of the Ida victims were already among the most impacted by the COVID pandemic. On that morning after the storm, and you may recall a bizarrely quiet and sunny morning, which belied the tragedies of the night before, the Governor Hochul, was walking the streets of our neighborhoods to see for herself the destruction. And this is who Governor Hochul has been since taking office in late August. Within a month of taking office, she managed to launch a $27 million Ida relief fund for undocumented individuals who did not qualify for FEMA aid. Our communities waited a year and a half for rental assistance. After months of delay, Governor Hochul was able to roll out the Emergency Rental Assistance Program within a month of taking office, ultimately getting more than $2 billion to New Yorkers in need. What's more, she has been a fierce advocate for more federal aid for ERAP. And after another inexcusable delay by the prior administration, Governor Hochul also moved with lightning speed on the Excluded Workers Fund, getting more than $2 billion, the maximum allowed by the state legislature, out the door to thousands of excluded, undocumented, essential workers and their families. It has been nearly 2 years since the COVID pandemic hit. And while we've adjusted to new normals and struggled to resume the life that we knew, thousands of homeowners are on the verge of losing their homes. Over the last 18 months, my organization, Chaya, has turned away hundreds of individuals who've come for help. And that's because there's nothing that we were able to do to help them. They were seeking financial assistance. Low to moderate income homeowners who lost income during the pandemic have been playing catch up with mortgage payments, taxes, and utility bills. Our people have been waiting a long time for help. The Homeowner Assistance Fund comes as a huge relief and will help families facing the threat of foreclosures stay in their homes. It's important to note that the communities most in need of this assistance are the most challenged by technology and language access. And therefore, we are especially grateful that the governor's office has put a great deal of effort into outreach and language accessibility. And it's no secret that homeownership is the very foundation of our communities, of their health, their well-being, and their financial wealth building. And so on behalf of our community members and our partner organizations, I want to thank you, Governor Hochul, for taking time to see and hear from our community members and for responding. We look forward to working with your office in rolling out the Homeownership Assistance Program and ensuring that our most vulnerable homeowners have the help that they need. Thank you.
Good afternoon, and thank you, Aneta, for your impassioned remarks to talk about the people that you represent so strongly and so in such a committed way to make sure that their voices are lifted up. And that's what this is all about, making sure that no one who has suffered from this pandemic, who, whether they were a renter, we focus very intensely on the rental relief programs, which you said had been held hostage for a while or not executed in a timely fashion, but also at the same time very conscious of the fact that there were many, many homeowners who were suffering just as well, those who were living on the margins to start, who lost their income because of no fault of their own, because of the pandemic, and got behind in their payments or were not able to make their other payments to be able to live in their homes. So I want to thank you for everyone at Chaya for continuing the outreach and giving people hope. And that is something we need to do to make sure that they don't give up and they know that there are government programs to assist them. So I want to thank you. I also want to thank the individuals who deserve the credit for this. And let's start with where this all originated in Washington, D.C. The administration of President Joe Biden, hearing the call of millions of U.S. citizens who suffered from this pandemic like no other, making sure that they got through Congress and Majority Leader Chuck Schumer and Senator Gillibrand, all the way to our congressional delegation. I want to thank the dean of that delegation, Jerry Nadler, for his tireless advocacy to make sure that New York was able to get funding like this. It is so critically important. All the way down to our legislature, our leaders, Andrea Stewart-Cousins, the Majority Leader of the Senate, who you'll be hearing from shortly, and Speaker Carl Hasting made sure that their conferences pulled together with us to make sure that we did what was right for the people we represent. Also, I want to thank Senator Kavanaugh, who you'll be hearing from shortly, whose voice has long been heard in the space of protecting both tenants and homeowners, not just in his district, across the state, as well as Assemblymember Simberwitz, who will be delivering remarks from Zoom as well. So I want to just make sure that this is not about one person being able to deliver a program. It is a concerted effort of all these leaders that are represented here and those that are back in Washington who made this happen in the first place. This is a critically important program. It has been something that we're proud to have applied for. It was applied for back in August, and we just received word from the federal administration on November 15th that the money was available, and New York State is the first in the nation to be approved for this. So we're launching a very intense outreach campaign, an education campaign, and we anticipate that applications will be able to be accepted beginning January 3rd. We wanted to get the word out now. We've brought on countless individuals, 70 organizations, who are be helping us get the word out to people and help them out. So we are very anxious to get this funding out there. And as you heard, these are for people who are homeowners who are in a forbearance plan, who fell behind on their mortgages, and also those who are not offered forbearance. They were just told that they're losing their home. Also those who are behind condo owners and co-op owners who might be behind on their maintenance fees, as well as those who live in manufactured homes who are behind on their loans. So it's not just one size fits all. There's many people who have been affected by this, and this addresses each one of them. So we're beginning with the vulnerable communities first. And as you heard from Annette, there's many of them who are actually suffering from the pandemic and then hit with the hurricane. So they've been suffering intensely, particularly in the neighborhood in Queens that you referenced, where I did spend many days walking in those neighborhoods where people were just so devastated by what they've had to go through for the last 20 months. So we want to make this simple, make sure that people understand how to apply, learn from some of our past examples of getting federal dollars out and streamlining it. These should not be so complicated that people give up, and that's what we've seen in the past. So there'll be a simple application. NewYorkHomeownerFund.org is where we want people to go. We'll be processing applications as they come in, first come, first serve, and we'll be prioritizing homeowners who are already in litigation, those who are most at risk of being evicted from their homes, and we'll protect those highest at risk of being in displacement. So that's what we're focused on, making sure we get this money out there and ensuring that we protect New Yorkers in every sense of the word. And when you think about insecurities, to a family that is sitting in their home, knowing that the world is swirling around them and they're just so stressed out and they're thinking about what they can possibly do to stop this foreclosure from happening and the loss of their beloved home. This is the lifeline that they've been waiting for. We are very anxious to get this out to people in need. We have our partners on the ground who are going to make sure that it is available and make sure that every person who applies, and we'll try to lift all the barriers to them. That's why we're going to have this available in 10 languages. That's why we're going to make sure that if someone is not able to apply online, even if they get help from a friend or a family member, that there's actually a phone number they can call to apply that way as well. Trying to identify all the areas where people have been stressed out, it's been hard for them in the past, and trying to work through them as we speak. So this is going to be a significant improvement, and letting people know that we're continuing this on top of the rent relief program we were able to get out there. This actually is people who are eligible for this, as I mentioned, are also individuals who own anywhere from 1 to 4 units. If it's owner occupied, they can be eligible for this as well. And so we are announcing today that we have $539 million approved by the federal government for this important Homeowner Assistance Fund, again, to help low and moderate homeowners try to just hang in there a little bit longer. So I wanted to be able to announce some of the other individuals who will be speaking to you today, and I want to tell them how much I appreciate what they have done. This is when we talk about what people do in Washington and our state capital. These are the kind of programs that result from that collaborative spirit, the sense that we have a crisis, we have to help people in need, and that's what you're seeing here today, the benefit of this. And I also want to thank Ruth Ann Visnauskas, our Commissioner of Housing and Community Renewal, for her team, for the extraordinary effort that they've done, making sure that this was done. That's why we're the first in America to be able to get this money out to people, particularly before the holidays. Let them know that they can apply early in January. This is coming. Help is on its way for literally thousands of families who've been hurt so hard by the pandemic. So I thank everybody, and I want to just get some more of the details out to all of you. I think we'll show that on the screen. Maybe the screen will not change, and that's okay with me. I think I just told you what we need. So with that, let me introduce Jerry Nadler, the Dean of the Delegation, for his remarks. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Governor. Thank you for you and your entire team for working so tirelessly to get to this moment, when New York became the first state in the nation to be approved by the Treasury Department to launch its Homeowner Assistance Fund. No one, not renters, not homeowners, should be forced from safe, affordable housing because of health-related or financial hardship caused by COVID. This program, which was created through the American Rescue Plan, will help eligible homeowners stay in their homes. This includes those who are behind on mortgage payments, property taxes, and water or sewage bills, and it includes owners of cooperative or condo units behind on maintenance fees or homeowner association payments. I'm proud we were able to all work together at all levels of government, the governor's office, the state legislature, and the New York congressional delegation, so that no one would be left behind. We certainly have more work to do as we recover from this devastating pandemic, but this important program will get us one step closer. Thank you. And now it gives me great pleasure to introduce, via Zoom, the great Majority Leader of the State Senate, Andrea Stewart Cousins.
Thank you so much, Congressman Nadler. And we could not be happier to be part of this wonderful, declaration of some help coming to our homeowners. I want to thank the governor for a partner in making sure that New Yorkers, wherever they are being helped as much as we can by putting forth our efforts and making sure things are done on time so that people can claim the things they need in order to get their lives back together. And certainly giving accolades to our leadership, Senator Schumer, as well as Senator Gillibrand and our wonderful congressional delegation. Thank you again, Congressman Nadler, because we could be doing all kinds of things in the state, but if we're doing it in a vacuum, then we cannot be as impactful as we should be. And we know COVID has really knocked everybody for a loop. And so many people are facing insecurity in terms of every direction, including housing and making sure that they can keep a roof over their head. And part of our conversation during all of our budget deliberations, you'll hear from my partner, Assembly Speaker Hasting, people in their homes, because besides your health, having some place to live is extremely you know, and we knew if our partners in Congress came through, there was a big emphasis on rent, but we also knew we needed to make sure that people who were homeowners were able to deal with mortgages that were in arrears. And I think here in New York State, it's about $6 billion of arrears in mortgages. How do you deal with those utility bills, water bills, insurance, all of these things? And we needed to put something in place, which we did in our budget, that should the money come, we would have a mechanism by which the money could go out. Fortunately, again, because we have partners in Congress, the money came. Fortunately, we had a mechanism by which to administer this money through the state government. Fortunately, we have a governor who got this moving quickly, and we have a, commissioner, and I also want to, who made sure the paperwork looked good enough for us to be number one. And I think, bodes well, but is certainly, our continued effort and our continued collaborative effort in order to make sure that people are able to bounce back economically from this terrible scourge of COVID. So again, congratulations to us all. We obviously have so much more to do, but I am so happy we're able to do it because we have real partners on every level. And that being said, I want to introduce my partner, the Assembly Speaker, Speaker Carl Hasting.
Thank you, Madam Majority Leader. First, let me, I want to thank my two partners in government, Governor Hochul, and also the Majority Leader of the State Senate, Andrew Stewart Cousins, and to the two extraordinary Housing Committee chairs, and Steve Simbowitz and the Assembly, and of course, Brian. And to you, the Dean of the Delegation, Congressman Nadler, you and of course the entire congressional delegation, along with our Senators Schumer and Gillibrand. Yeah, I remember last year my many discussions and calls and plea for help to the congressional delegation. I could say just about every single thing that we were concerned about and distressed about the needs of what the state of New York had to have based on this pandemic. It's great that we had a congressional delegation that stepped up and took care of us in every phase of life. So I really think that we should tip our hats to our congressional delegation. As a leader cousin said, for us as well in the Assembly, we always wanted to take a balanced approach. We tried to fit the needs of landlords, and of course, property owners, homeowners who are living this pandemic didn't spare anyone, and it touched everyone. And we wanted to make sure that the type of assistance would be helpful to everyone. So I'm so happy that we're able to now get to this next phase of helping New Yorkers, and that's what our commitment was last year. That's what our commitment is now, and that's what our commitment is going to be next year, to continue to make sure that we can steer through this new normal of living with COVID here in New York. So I'm happy that this program is going to move forward, particularly even if a mortgage, if your bank gave you a forbearance, that's pretty much taking the interest and putting it on the end of the loan. So the fact that homeowners won't have to, in these instances, who qualify for the program, that's a huge financial burden that homeowners won't have to deal with. So it's the holiday season. We like to give good news to make sure that people are able to stay in their homes. So great work by our congressional delegation, great work by our governor, and great work by my partner and partner in the legislature, Andrew Stewart Cousins, and in the New York State Senate. And it is my pleasure to introduce, I always believe, whether it's a president, a member of Congress, or even a New York State senator. All good things start in the New York State Assembly. And we have with us the chair of the New York State Senate Housing Committee, a former member of the Assembly, Senator Brian Kavanaugh.
Thank you very much, Carl Hasty, who, as Carl notes, I had the great honor and pleasure of serving with for 11 years in the Assembly, and learned a great deal from him and from my colleagues, and particularly from the Assembly Housing Chair, Steve Simbrowitz, I'll introduce in a moment. But I'm going to just briefly join the gratitude fest that's going on here today. We really are tremendously grateful for the congressional delegation, for our 2 U.S. senators, and for Jerry Nadler and our congressional delegation for delivering extraordinary amounts of resources for us so that we can address the needs of every New Yorker, and particularly in the housing space where I've been working. And of course, our great leaders of both houses of the legislature, and what is particularly new here is a governor who began even during the interregnum, that 2 weeks when the prior governor had announced that he would be leaving, and we knew that new governor was coming in, but already began speaking emphatically about the need to ensure that we keep everybody in their homes, that nobody loses a home because of the health crisis or because of the economic crisis that has quickly followed that. And we know that crisis has been long, and it has been brutal for many of us, and we know that it is continuing. We are 21 months into this pandemic. We still have many people dying throughout the state, but we have taken aggressive steps in New York, I would argue, almost uniquely in America, to address this in a comprehensive way through our moratoria legislation, through an enormous rental assistance program. We are now #1 in the nation in terms of making that rental assistance program work. But there has been a big gap, and that has been the gap in not having financial relief for homeowners. We've addressed the danger of people losing their homes through the moratoria legislation, both through mortgages as well as tax issues, but having a funding source that allows us to begin to pay the costs that have been incurred over this time and that people have been unable to pay themselves because of job losses and income loss as a result of COVID really is a critical step. In my district, I would note in particular that co-op owners who are homeowners, that's one of our biggest ways of having homeownership in the city, have been excluded so far from programs, and they will be included in this program. We have a lot more work to do. We will be back in session in January. We will continue to work with our partners, looking to ensure that we continue to do what's necessary to ensure that nobody loses their home, to reflect the fact that housing is very much healthcare all the time, but particularly in a crisis like this. The CDC did an analysis of eviction moratoria and found out when they are allowed to expire prematurely, COVID infections go up directly as a result of that. So we know that housing policy, as we've done it, has been effective so far. We know that we need to continue to work to be effective. And again, it is a great honor to serve with the legislative leaders we've heard from, with a great governor. And I should note Ruth Ann Wisniewski, who at HCR really has crafted a wonderful program. It is no accident that this is the first such program that's been approved in the nation. So now, without further ado, there's often competitive relationships between the different houses of the legislature, but I had, again, the great pleasure of serving with Assemblymember Simbrowitz for very long. When he was the housing chair, I was a member of his committee, and now it is a great honor, and it's been an extraordinary productive relationship where we really have worked together to solve so many of these crises, both before the pandemic and as it set in 21 months ago. So without further ado, Assemblymember Steve Simbrowitz, chair of the Assembly Housing Committee.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm pleased to join the governor, Congressman Nadler, and my colleagues in government for this very important announcement. Since the start of the pandemic, many of our small homeowners have been struggling under the weight of financial loss and, through no fault of their own, have found themselves unable to meet their mortgages and other monthly expenses. As chair of the Assembly Housing Committee, I believe that the HAF program will be the lifeline that will help restore financial security to many of our low and moderate income homeowners who have been hurt by the pandemic. By helping these homeowners, the program will also help restore stability to an entire communities that have been left vulnerable by the economic devastation of the last 21 months. The ERAP and LRAP programs were crucial elements in our arsenal to get people back on track. But the Homeowner Assistance Fund is desperately needed now to avoid the nightmares of mortgage delinquency, foreclosure, and displacement. I commend Governor Kathy Hochul and the New York congressional delegation for their efforts in pushing the Treasury Department to approve this program and get the recovery process moving for our state's eligible homeowners. I thank our legislative leaders. I thank Senator Kavanaugh, who's a pleasure to work with, Commissioner Visnauskas. We thank you for the program that you've put together. I look forward to seeing the HAF work as a catalyst to restore our people and our state to a healthier place economically and as a key part of our larger COVID recovery. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. At this time, we'll clear the room and I'll return for questions. But again, I want to thank our incredible partners here. This does not happen without collaboration and a willingness to roll up our sleeves and work together on behalf of the people of this state. And that's how we've operated thus far, and that's how we're going to continue working, especially as we enter the session in a matter of weeks. So thank you for attending today. Good afternoon, and thank you again for coming. It's a great news day to be able to announce $539 million to go out to homeowners who are very stressed out as the holiday season's approaching and how they're going to make those payments. So thank you for attending. Any questions?
Do you believe that Jim Malatra should remain in his post? I know that concerns were raised that he was installed there by the previous administration without going through the proper protocols and procedures, and now more information has come to light of his role in the previous administration. What are your thoughts on that?
I will address what I can control, and from day one in my administration, I've been very clear that we will treat each other with respect, that there'll be no sexual harassment, and there are consequences for people to do within my administration. I understand that Jim Malatras and all of us understand that he has been appointed to the position by the trustees, so it's not part of my administration. However, I understand that he's working with individuals to earn their trust, and I encourage him to do so. Yeah.
You personally think that he should step down. I understand you just made it clear that it's not directly your decision, but in your personal opinion, do you think he stepped down, and does he still have your trust?
We need a leader of the SUNY institution. I'm going to be making an overhaul of the SUNY system part of my state of the state. We have very bold plans that I want to see executed, and I want to see them continue. And in speaking through my administration to a number of trustees, continuity at this time is important, so I understand their rationale for wanting to not ask him to take steps. However, we have to make sure that there is a culture where this behavior is not acceptable, and those conversations continue.
Governor Hochul, New York City still has a tax lien sale scheduled for December. That's, the debts that you're talking about, you're trying to help homeowners repay. That's going to be before this money gets to those homeowners, because the application isn't open until January. Do you think New York City, have you talked to New York City about postponing the tax lien sale?
Yeah, they're familiar with what we're doing here, and certainly these conversations are important to have maximum flexibility for these individuals so they don't end up losing their homes when they could have been receiving assistance just a few weeks later. We are prioritizing people in the most vulnerable communities, people who earn under 100% of AMI, so we're looking at lower income individuals who are in the situation. So that's certainly something we should look into, is finding out the timing of that and whether it has to continue on schedule.
Governor, the mayor announced today the new mandate for private businesses. I was wondering, did he give you the heads up about this? Because many members of the business community are complaining about being blindsided by this. Also, do you think it's a good idea? Should different municipalities around the state have different policies on the subject?
As I've stated from the outset of my administration, I believe that where necessary, there should be a statewide approach. but when not necessary or we're waiting for more data, that we can have a more surgical approach to dealing with the pandemic. And what I've empowered localities to do, and New York City is one of the localities within the state of New York, just as Erie County is, encouraging local leaders to do an assessment of their situation and to take the actions they deem necessary. So yes, the mayor did call me before he announced it. We have had a very good relationship in terms of sharing our ideas and what we plan to do, and so no one is blindsided, so I was aware of this. And I support the local government leaders to execute the policies to fight COVID as they believe will be most helpful to deal with this pandemic within their own jurisdictions.
New York City has a relatively low COVID infection rate compared to the rest of the state. Is it time, with infection rates reaching 14% in parts of the state, for that statewide approach that you're talking about, with Omicron potentially coming in the winter?
Right, and I understand. I've been talking about this for months. About the advent of this winter surge, which we fully anticipate. Our highest concern has been hospital capacity. That's why morning, noon, and night, my team and I are gathered working with county executives regularly, hospital administrators regularly, also the local health departments regularly, to make sure that we are all in sync and making sure we address the situation so in no area of the state is anyone denied quality health care. And that's what our main objective has been. But we are watching the numbers closely. We know that I said there would be a spike after Thanksgiving. There is a spike after Thanksgiving. This is very cyclical compared to the evidence we have from dealing with last year. And it also tapered off once January arose. And last year, may I remind everyone, we didn't even have a vaccine or booster. So we're going to continue focusing on those and also policies that we believe are enforceable. And I know this state better than anyone, and I know people's appetites for more restrictions. I will always invoke restrictions, new protocols where necessary, but I need more information. And you mentioned the latest variant, Omicron. We don't know enough right now. The early reports are saying it's highly transmissible, but it's not as doesn't cause as much illness as the Delta. So the primary variant in this country right now is still Delta, and that's what we're dealing with. However, as I keep saying, I'm qualifying, I'm operating under the facts as I have them on this very date. Circumstances could change like this, and I'll be nimble enough to make everything that I've put in place. Everything is ready to be deployed should we need to take any further steps to protect the people of the state, which is my highest priority.
Governor, we're going to take some questions now over Zoom, and your first question comes from Jeff Cole at WWNY TV. Jeff, your mic is open.
There we go. All right, Governor, how are you? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
Hey, good afternoon. Thanks for the time. With the announcement that the Ogdensburg Correctional Facility is going to be closing in March, it's been learned that there's a garden program there that about 40,000 pounds of fresh produce is harvested from it, and it goes to local food pantries in St. Lawrence County. Senator Ritchie has asked you to reverse the decision to close the Ogdensburg facility and instead keep it open, expand the garden program so more people could be fed downstate. So wondering if you are aware of it, are you considering reversing the decision? And if not, will you increase the funding for those local food pantries that are going to be without the 40,000 pounds of food because they don't have it in their budget to go out and buy that food? So they're now in a problem as well because of this decision with Ogdensburg. Thank you.
Well, I'm happy to address that on a number of fronts. One is that I have been very concerned about farmers, those who produce our crops and our dairy, and how we can make sure that it gets to the food banks. And a program that was launched during the pandemic, which was very successful, is called Nourish New York. Literally just 2 weeks ago, I stood in Queens at a place which was very heartbreaking to see, a line of 8,000 people looking to get Thanksgiving food to bring home to their families. And we announced that this program is now permanent. So New York State will be committed going from that day forward to making sure that we use state resources to purchase items from local farmers to get them into the food banks. However, the situation you talk about is something I'm willing to look at, how we can continue growing those crops and getting that food into food banks or replacing it somewhere else. But that should not be a reason to keep a facility open. And we're only closing 6 at this time, and every one of them has less than half of the capacity that it was built for. And it's a good thing that we have fewer people in prisons right now. I believe that is true. But I also said I knew there would be economic impacts on a local community. I had a prison close not far from where I grew up, and there's a lot of people I knew personally who would no longer be able to have the job where they wanted to as a corrections officer. So we offer those jobs to corrections officers elsewhere. I am also looking for creative solutions on how to retrofit those buildings, which are part of state property, to bring them back to the community. So I'm looking for input from the communities on how they want to use that. And perhaps in that case, and I'm happy to have conversations with Senator Ritchie, I have a strong relationship with her from the days we were back when we were county clerks. We can possibly look at that as another opportunity for using the facility for a different purpose, but making sure that we don't leave our food banks in trouble. So thank you for the question.
Governor, your next question comes from Kate Lisa from Johnson Newspapers. Kate, your mic is open.
Hi, Governor. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can, Kate.
Great. So first, I wanted to ask you, I think you said this program is for $539 million, and I believe it's it's going to satisfy or try to help up to $6 billion in mortgage arrears. So what about the other $5.5 billion that would be left over in there? What will you do to help those other homeowners? And also the emergency rental assistance program really was off to a sluggish start and got held up. So how will you make sure that these same kind of hurdles are not going to hold up this funding?
Well, we did work very hard to get the money out for two major programs early on. One was the excluded worker program, where there was over $2 billion, of which none had gone out when I took office at the end of August. Also, the direct rental assistance program, $2 billion as well. Well more than half of that money is in the hands of individuals, and the rest of it is already committed at this time. So we know exactly where that money is going, and the people know it's coming. This program, we're also trying to learn from the programs of the past, which is why we've simplified this. We've made it so much easier for people to apply, and making sure that it's in many languages and that there's people on phones to be able to answer questions. So we anticipate that this is going to be a far different process to apply for. Did the federal government give us enough money to take care of every single homeowner in the state of New York? No. No, they did not. It's a $10 billion nationwide program, of which we have $539 million allocated for the state of New York. Now, there could be an opportunity if the money's not used, the $10 billion is not used all over the country, that there could be another program like we have with the rental one, where we're now going back and asking for any leftovers, so to speak, that were not used in other parts of the country. We've asked for nearly $1 billion more for the rent relief program from that Treasury pot. That money's sitting there, we hope. And if it is, our hands are out first. And we're very good at being first. As we know, we're the first in the nation to make this available to people. It'll never be enough, but it's far more than we have right now. The average family will be able to secure about $30,000. The maximum is $50,000. So it is not the complete answer to the crisis. That is alarming to all of us as well. But we only can work with what we've received from the federal government this far. And I'm grateful for every penny that we have, as well the families that will be benefiting from this, knowing that this holiday season is not the one they expect, but at least starting in January, they can prepare to start applying for this.
Thank you very much, Governor. Just have time for one more Zoom question. Your final question comes from Shannon Young of Politico New York. Shannon, your mic is open.
Hey, Governor. Today, new surge and flex rules took effect at hospitals across the state. Can you give us an update on how many facilities are affected by those rules and sort of how this process is going to work moving forward? And then secondly, just wanted to get some clarification. You keep saying that you're ready, willing, and able to exercise sort of a statewide policy if needed. What sort of metrics or thresholds would need to happen for that to be triggered across the state? Would infections have to hit a certain rate, or would hospitalizations have to hit a certain rate?
Well, part of that has to tie in with the factoring in the Omicron variant, because when I stood here just days ago and said that we had 5 cases, then 3 more, I just asked in the last hour, and no more have been identified in the state of New York. That could change like this. We know after a weekend there's less processing going on, less sequencing going on in the lab, so I was waiting to see what would happen on a Tuesday. Right now we don't have more identified. That would have been a major trigger if we saw that there was 2 things. One is we're still waiting for information from the CDC and health experts to tell us, is this a variant that is lethal, that is something that is having breakthroughs from not just vaccinations but possibly booster shots? That's the data that we don't have right now. but I'm waiting to process that and determine what the landscape looks like and project out as far as we can as whether or not this is going to get worse, or are we going to hit a point just after the holiday season where it's going to start coming down. So that's all what goes into the calculation of what we're doing here. First part of your question was? I think I answered it, but I wanted to make sure. Elective surgery, I'm sorry. Got my mind on a lot of topics right now. Elective surgery, we'll be announcing at 5 o'clock today, the hospitals that will be ceasing elective surgery. I want you to know that this has been worked on 24 hours a day by our team to work with the healthcare providers. We did not want to return to a scenario in the early months of the pandemic where there was a wholesale shutting down of elective surgeries regardless of what the infection rate was in a region. So in fact, New York City was hit the hardest, but there were counties like Orleans County and Cattaraugus County and others where they really had almost no cases, but they also had to stop elective surgery. So we've learned a lot from that experience to not just have a one-size-fits-all approach, make it more targeted to the hospitals that really are in trouble or the hospital systems in a region. So we think that there'll probably be around 30 in the 30s. I would say in the 30s right now. And again, those are areas where we're sending assistance. We have the National Guard literally on the ground now to relieve some of the pressure that's going on in nursing homes. Again, nursing homes are where the places people are being kept in hospitals longer than necessary because they can't be discharged to the nursing home because they don't have enough staff. So I figured this out, that the best way to deal with this is to bring in more assistance to some of the nursing homes. Also, some of the downstate hospital systems are also allowing us to borrow people and have them go to other parts of the state. And so you'll start to see that pressure relieved. It's not going to be an easy situation. We expect to see a continuation, but not an uncontrolled situation. That's important. We know the data. We're in close contact with elected leaders. We support their local efforts. And again, I'm reserving the right to take further steps if necessary. So thank you all for coming out today. I appreciate your interest in this program. Thank you.